Sections 12, 13, and 14 of Sree Krishna, the Lord of Love, by Baba Premanand Bharati. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 12, the Kalpa Cycle. When the golden, silver, copper, and iron ages, forming the divine cycle, have revolved for 1,000 times, they complete a still larger cycle than the Manvantara, called the Kalpa. As each Manvantara is wound up with a deluge, each Kalpa brings about a still greater disastrous event, that of the destruction of the lower three spheres of the universe, the Bur, Bhuba, and Swar. The description given of this great cyclic event in the Puranas as well as in the Mahabharata, especially by the immortal Markandeya, who has seen it many times, are simply appalling to the imagination of puny man. As I have already said, it is only the excessive accumulation of human sins, Tama life, that causes these natural catastrophes. The sum of sins which causes the Kalpa dissolution is many times greater than that which is the cause of the flood. Human sins, however, are the immediate cause. The real or latent cause is to be found in the operations of the cardinal attributes of nature. Sattva and Raja are absolutely subdued by Tama, which then, growing more and more intense, bursts into a flame out of the friction of its own forces. This conflagration first manifests itself through etheric matter in the shape of 7 suns suddenly appearing in the heavens, and with their combined heat burning down the 3 spheres into ashes. This is followed by the appearance of strange clouds, which then burst and deluge the ash-turned earth. The ash, in process of time, is absorbed by the water. Then the air, turned into violent winds, absorbs the water. And then, when the air has been absorbed by ether, Akash, the destruction of the 3 spheres is completed. The immortal Markandeya described this pralaya, dissolution, 5,000 years ago to King Yudhisthira in the presence of Krishna and the assembled sages in the Kamrak forest. The following is a summary of his statement. O King, at the end, the Kali Yuga, previous to this pralaya, when the earthly days of all beings have come to an end, no rains will fall on earth for many successive years, in consequence of which all beings on earth will die, owing to unbearable heat and hunger caused by drought and famine. Then will appear simultaneously in the heavens 7 suns which will draw all the waters from all seas and rivers, whether dry or wet. Whatever grass or wood there is on earth will be reduced to tinder. Then will spring up the fire called Samvartak, which, aided by the wind, will attack the sun-absorbed earth, and piercing its surface will burn all there is in its bowels. Indeed, by this wind-helped Samvartak fire, all created beings, from the gods to creeping things, and all that now exists in the 3 worlds, will be destroyed and transformed into one huge heap of ashes. Then will appear in the firmament wonderful-looking, lightning-bedecked clouds, arrayed as garlanded rows of elephants. These clouds are some of them of the color of the blue lotus, some of the color of the kummud flower, some of the color of the golden heart of the lotus, some yellow, some green, some speckled gray, like the color of the crow's egg, some colored like lotus leaves, some are light brown, others look like large cities, others like hordes of elephants, others like the color of eye cosmetics, others shaped like crocodiles. These mysterious-looking, deep-sounding rain clouds, sent by God, spreading themselves over the sky, will send down rains in a continuous stream, like watery pillars descending from above, inundating all the ash-heaped mountains and valleys, and extinguish the fearful Samvartak fire. O King of the Pandus, thus after these rains have fallen continuously for 12 years, the waters of the seas will rise in a flood and cover the earth, at which the still solid cohesiveness of her mountains giving way, the earth will sink to the bottom of the sea. Then the clouds, driven by the powerful winds in all directions, will suddenly disappear. Then he of the lotus abode and lotus born, the primeval god Brahma, drinking in the winds and the air, will fall into sleep at the close of his day. The lower three spheres, Bur, Buba, and Swar, are thus dissolved, and there is nothing in their place but one vast expanse of water. The upper four spheres, Mehar, Jhana, Tapa, and Satya, or Brahma, remain intact. The dwellers of the Mahar Loka, however, unable to bear the heat of the Samvartak fire during the earth's destruction, leave it and go up to the Jhana to live there during the duration of the Pralaya. Now the question may be asked why these four upper heavens are not destroyed, and how can there be an ocean of water when the water element is destroyed along with the other elements? The answer is very interesting and instructive. There are two kinds or states of these five elements: ether, air, fire, water, earth. One may be called pure and the other mixed. The pure state of an element means wholly unmixed by even the least touch or tinge of the other four elements. A mixed element is made up of half part of one element, mixed with 1/8 part of each of the other four elements. The Bur, Buba, and Swar are made of these five mixed elements, which being destroyed by this Kalpa Palaya, the three spheres are necessarily destroyed too. The upper four spheres are made of the unmixed elements, and hence they survive the Kalpa dissolution of the mixed elements. It is needless to say that dwellers of these upper realms are possessed of a physical body made of these five pure elements, and in the highest realms the dwellers have no physical bodies at all, and therefore no elements in their makeup. The bodies of some of them are formed of the five finest essences of the elements: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, and of others, the highest beings in the Brahma Loka, of nothing but consciousness and ego and ensouled mind. The water of the watery expanse into which the lower three spheres are reduced by the Kalpa Palaya is this unmixed pure water, which is invisible to our ordinary physical eye. The world is indebted to the immortal Markandeya for a description of what remains after this Kalpa dissolution. Blessed then with the finest and purest element body, he alone hovers over this vast watery expanse. His experiences are recorded in that history of the universe, the Mahabharata, of which here are a few details. Said Markandeya, O king, in this time of the Kalpa Palaya, when all gods, asuras, elements, demons, men, animals, trees, and the firmament, etc., all the mobile and immobile beings and objects will be dissolved into one vast ocean, I alone will hover over that endless expanse of water and become sad-hearted on viewing this general destruction. After floating on it for a very long period of time, I will feel extremely exhausted. Then shortly after, a huge tree in the midst of that one ocean will attract my eye. O king, resting on the spreading boughs of that tree, I will see, seated on a couch of glory, a lotus-eyed boy with a face radiant like the light of the full moon. Instantly on seeing him, I shall be extremely astonished, and will say within myself, how wonderful! Everything has been destroyed. How then is this boy resting here? O great king, although I am blessed with the knowledge of the past, present, and future, I shall fail to know who that child may be. Then the lotus-eyed boy will thus speak to me in the sweetest voice. O Markandeya, I know thee, thou art become very weary and wishing for rest. Therefore do thou enter my body, and live there as long as thou mayest desire. I have been very pleased with thee, O king. On hearing these words of the boy, I will be filled with the spirit of indifference to my manhood and long life, at which suddenly that boy will open his mouth, and I will then enter into that mouth through some divine means. O great king, through his mouth I shall enter his belly, and to my astonishment shall see within him this whole earth of many kingdoms and cities, rivers, mountains, seas, the blue heavens bedecked with the sun and the moon, and the many forests. There I shall find Brahmins engaged in various religious ceremonies, the Kshatriyas in ruling to the satisfaction of all other castes, the Vaishyas in their usual vocation of agriculture, and the Sudras in rendering loving sacrifices to the Brahmins. Lions and tigers and all the gods, angels, and serial beings are living peacefully in their respective spheres. In fact, all that existed before, I shall find existing within the belly of that great soul. O king, thus having seen the whole world within that boy, I will travel for many thousand years, like one in a dream, within that world, and in trying to find out its limit, will rush in all directions, but will not succeed in doing so. Then disappointment will turn my thoughts to that beautiful boy again, and with all the concentrated force in my body, mind, and speech, I will then ask for his protection and grace. At this I will be carried by a violent wind, as it were, through his mouth out of his body, and I will find him still sitting under that tree. The boy will then ask me with delighted heart and smiling face, O my good Rishi Markandeya, thou didst become very tired floating on these waters for such a long time. Have you now been well refreshed by living within my body? Then I will behold my soul freed from all bondage by the illumination which will enter me with the boy's words, and placing his crimson feet on my head, I will address him thus with folded hands and humility. How lucky I am! Today I have beheld the lotus-eyed God of gods, the soul of all things. O God, I have become very curious to know thee in this thy wonderful Maya illusion. Entering thy belly through thy mouth, I have seen the whole world existing there. O Lord, it was through thy grace that I did not lose my memory, and it is through thy will that I have now come out of thy body. O lotus-eyed, I have become very desirous to know thee. Why art thou resting here in the form of a boy, after having devoured the whole world? How is it that this whole world is now dwelling in thy body? How much longer wilt thou rest here, O Lord of gods? These subjects are great and unthinkable, and so I beg to hear from thee their detailed explanations. The God of the gods, after consoling me on the last occasion, began to answer my questions. He said, O Brahman, even the gods have failed to know the mysteries of my creation. I will tell thee of it only to please thee. O Rishi, thy wonderful devotion to thy father and to me, and to spiritual celibacy, have won thee this grace. I have appeared before thy vision. In time past I called water by the term Nar. This Nar is ever my seat, hence I am called Narayan. I am the first cause. I am eternal, inexhaustible, the creator and destroyer of all that exists. I'm all wealth. I'm death. I'm Shiva. Fire is in my mouth. The earth is in my feet. The sun is my two eyes. The celestial regions are my head. The sky and the cardinal points are my two ears. Space and eternity are my body. The winds, my mind. All sacred ceremonies are performed to please me. All the Vedas come out of and enter into me. The peace, loving mind, disciplined, inquiring, souls, mystery knowing, Brahmins contemplate and worship me alone. I am the fire called Samvartak. I am the Samvartak winds, and it is I who am the seven suns that rise and shine in Palaya. The stars that thou seest now in the firmament are the pores of my body. The sky is my raiment. The sea is my seat and abode. It is I who have divided them as they are. Men are born or overwhelmed by my Maya, and become enterprising through my law, never through their own desire. Those Brahmins who thoroughly study the Vedas, perform many spiritual sacrifices, bring peace to their souls, and vanquish anger. It is they who attain to me. Those persons who are addicted to bad actions, are swayed by greed, are misers, crooked-minded, and void of soul culture, can never reach me. The paths of yoga are as easy for pure souls to tread as they are uncertain to the wicked and the foolish. Whenever religion suffers from revolution and vice triumphs over virtue, I create myself and walk the earth and set things right. Whenever are born on the earth the selfish and envious asuras and demons so powerful that even the gods cannot destroy them, I, in the form of man, take birth in the family of pious men and bring peace to the world again by subduing them. I am white-complexioned in the Satya Yuga, yellow in the Treta, red in the Dwapar, and dark in the Kali. At the end of each great cycle it is I who destroy everything. I am the three paths, the soul of the universe, giver of all happiness, superior to all, all-pervading, the endless and the all-powerful. At the last Kali Yuga of each Kalpa, I spread my illusion upon all beings and enter into my trance state, when old Brahma, transformed into a child, goes to sleep and keeps sleeping. I rest here on the waters until he is awakened. Now go thou about on the waters in restful spirit until that time when I alone will create again earth and sky and light, air and water, and all bodies. So saying, O king, that wonderful being vanished from my view. Then by and by this world was created again. Thus in the last Kalpa, Palaya, did I witness this wonderful event. The lotus-eyed deity I then saw. You brothers have now established blood relations with him, this Krishna. It is through his grace that I have obtained uninterrupted memory, become so long-lived and endowed with the boon of dying at my will. This Krishna who is now sitting before us all, this Krishna present here who is born in the line of the Vrishnis, is just now merely playing on his earth, but it is he, this Krishna, who is the ancient person, the Lord, the unthinkable soul, the creator, the destroyer, the eternal, and the master of all. I have been able to remember all these facts only through the inspiration of his presence here. He is the mother and father of all beings. Do you all take his refuge. Krishna has been called Narayan here by Markandeya, because Narayan, the fourth form manifestation of Krishna in the unfoldment of creation, is generally known as the supreme deity, Krishna. Narayan, as I have said before, this is Aniruddha, out of whose navel springs the seed bud lotus with Brahma, the operating creator of the details creation. Section 13, Natural Dissolution. What is popularly known as universal destruction is termed in the Hindu scriptures Prakritik Pratisanchar, or natural retrogression, which means natural dissolution. This marks the close of the greatest cycle of time. It is the end of time, the end of creation. It is the Mahapralaya. It involves the annihilation of the universe, in one sense, because after its occurrence none of the principles except the ultimate exists. In one sense, I say advisedly, for although the manifest universe becomes non-existent, its latent spiritual impressions forming its germ are carried by the three cardinal attributes into the ultimate principle, love, Krishna, and preserved unconsciously, even during their rest in Krishna in a state of equilibrium. It is out of this mystic ideation that in the event of the inequilibrium of the attributes, a fresh creation springs into existence. There is no such thing as destruction in the law of nature. Nothing is destroyed totally. All forms of destruction are but phases of transmutation, from gross manifestation into fine, from fine into finer, from finer into finest, from finest into mystic ideation, which belongs to the realm of absolute spirituality. The Hindu doctrine in regard to the process of creation is the unfoldment of the 23 principles from the reflection of the one, the manifestation into many, and the diverse of the mystic energy of the one, unchangeable, absolute. This mystic energy unrolls its many and diverse phases and forces in creation and incessantly throughout its duration. Prakritic means natural from prakriti, nature. Pratisanchar is prati and sanchar. Prati means backward and sanchar means the act of moving, motion. The whole word therefore means moving backward. Prakritic pratisanchar therefore is the moving backward of the unfolded principles of existence, nature, into its one source, out of which they originally spring. This backward motion of variety into unity is caused by the extreme action of intense tama, from which the following natural reaction puts the forces of the three cardinal attributes into equilibrium. This equilibrium is the unmanifest, avyakta, unexpressed state of nature, and the inequilibrium brings about the manifest state, the gross form of which is the universe. This action of natural dissolution has also its reaction. It reacts into a fresh creation. The symptoms which manifest themselves previous to the occurrence of this universal destruction are almost the same as those before the Kalpa Pralaya. Only the degeneration of human society develops worse phases, which are followed by intense heat, owing to the suspension of rains for years and years together, resulting in the death of all moving and breathing beings. Then appear in the heavens 12 suns, instead of 7, as in the Kalpa Pralaya, which give birth to the Samvartak fire. The fire is followed by the appearance of the Samvartak clouds, which deluge the earth with continuous rains for years. The deluge is followed by the winds, etc. But the main difference lies in the absolutely destructive power of these elemental agents. When the suns and the fire have done their work, the black surface of the earth looks like the back of a tortoise. Then the water in which it is submerged absorbs the very attribute of earth, smell, along with its substance, which then becomes absolutely non-existent and transformed into water. The water is then absorbed by fire, heat with its attribute, taste, so that water becomes absolutely non-existent and is turned into fire. The volume of fire is then so increased that it burns the suns themselves, so that all the heavens, filled with all-pervading flames, burn on until everything in them is destroyed. Then the air devours the fire with its attribute form, so that there remains nothing visible to the eye. The winds then move about with all their force in the akas. Then Aka's ether absorbs the air with its attribute touch, so that nothing remains which can be felt. Then Akas itself becomes unmanifest, the universal mind having absorbed its attribute sound, which originally sprang from it to create Akas ether. This is called the dissolution of the gross form of the universe. The dissolution of the fine, subtle form begins with the moon, the presiding deity of the mind, absorbing the mind with its attribute, the power of willing and non-willing, which power, with all its associations, is then centered in the moon. After a long time, the mind, centralized in the moon, brings about the poise in its vibratory volition, the cause of material desires. This will control results in the moon-centered mind being absorbed by its original belief in the oneness of nature and Brahm, divine essence. The belief in this unity, ego, is then absorbed by universal consciousness, and universal consciousness, with its attribute of the power of decision, is absorbed by absolute being, one of the three attributes of Parabrahm. Then wisdom, another of the three attributes, also called intelligence or truth, absorbs this absolute being. Then that all impregnated wisdom enters the unmanifest soul, absolute love, Krishna, Section 14, Modern Scientific Testimony. A recent discovery of modern science has not only thrown the clearest light upon this Hindu doctrine of the unity and composition of the universe, but has fully proved its correctness. This is the first indirect investigation of Western material science into the realm of the subjective side of creation. The author of this discovery, by strange irony of fate, is a Hindu, though educated and trained in scientific knowledge in England under English teachers of science. He is now a scientific celebrity among Western scientific celebrities of the day, and if the work of his tested discovery be rightly estimated, he ought to be classed with the highest of them all. His name is Professor Jagadesh Chandra Bose, Doctor of Science, Professor of Science in the Calcutta University. Professor Bose's discovery, now embodied in book form and entitled Response in the Living and the Non-Living, marks a new epoch in the advancement of modern science. It has been accepted by all scientific authorities after the professor had demonstrated it by experiments before a large number of scientific people in London, and notably by Lord Kelvin. Armed with the demonstrated facts of this discovery, Professor Bose maintains that the true test of the existence of life in any form of matter is its sensitiveness to external stimulus. According to this test, he proves conclusively that no essential difference exists between animals and metals or vegetables. He has shown by scientific experiments that a bar of iron is not only as irritable and sensitive as a human body, but that it can be killed or poisoned in the same way as a human body can be killed or poisoned. According to his discovery, life pervades every object and part of nature, and only some of these parts or objects can be said to be in a dead state, which means they can be deprived of their sensitiveness to external stimulus. If any part of our body is pinched, the nerve which connects that part with the brain running all along sends an electric current to the brain, vibrating under the pinch. The brain alone feels the pain inflicted upon any part of our body, says modern science, and it is proved by the fact that no pain is felt by us if our brain is deadened by chloroform. The galvanometer is a well-known and very delicate scientific instrument for detecting the presence of electric currents. It has a needle on a pivot, and the faintest electric current will cause a deflection of this needle. If at any intervening part of the electric current-bearing nerve in the human body the galvanometer be attached and the end of the nerve pinched or otherwise irritated, then immediately the needle of the galvanometer will deflect, thus showing that the irritation of the nerve causes a current like that of electricity to be sent along it. This fact is now very well known to scientists, and Professor Bose's investigations are based upon this well-known scientific fact. With a view to ascertaining whether or not matter which has hitherto been known as non-living could be proved so under the test of the galvanometer, the professor attached the instrument to bars of different metals with startling contrary results. The professor found that all metals show visible signs of sensitiveness when twisted or tapped. The greater the irritation, the greater the visible signs of sensitiveness. Even every single peculiarity in the irritability of animal matter is exactly reproduced in the case of metal. As for instance, when the sensitiveness of a muscle or a nerve of an animal wears off after time, under repeated irritation, it begins to show signs of fatigue, the deflection of the needle of the galvanometer becoming more and more feeble. The professor found that metals would betray exactly the same signs of fatigue under repeated irritation. Again, after a short rest, the signs of fatigue were found to disappear in animal muscle and in metal alike, their sensitiveness being fully restored. This last fact is known to many of us who constantly use a razor and find it losing its keen edge and growing duller and duller, despite vigorous stropping and spontaneously recovering its original keenness by being laid aside for a few days. Professor Bose's process of registering the deflections of the needle of the galvanometer is this. By a mechanical device, the point of the needle is photographed on paper, which is moved along at a constant rate, the needle's point tracing out a series of zigzag lines on the paper. When the needle is oscillated by an electric current, the width of the zigzags corresponds to the amount of the deflection of the needle, therefore the strength of the electric current. If there be no current and consequently no deflection of the needle, its point will remain stationary and merely trace a straight line on the moving paper. This book of Professor Bose's Response in the Living and the Non-Living is full of still more wonderful revelations. He has found and shown to the satisfaction of European scientists through experiments that metals do not only go to sleep, but can be poisoned and killed like human beings and animals. Like an unused animal muscle showing signs of sluggishness and appearing to be in a kind of torpor, then gradually seeming to waken up under irritation and finally returning to full activity, Professor Bose proves that metals behave in exactly the same way in process of gradation. He also proves that the effects of extreme cold and extreme heat produce exactly similar conditions in both animals and metals. But men or animals can be drugged and made drunk. Can metals likewise be drugged and made drunk? Yes, says Professor Bose, and he proves it absolutely. He proves that metals show the same increase of irritability under the influence of stimulants and narcotics as the human body. Moreover, even as different animals are affected differently by the same dose of a stimulant, so also are different metals. Under the influence of carbonate of sodium, irritability of platinum is increased threefold, while the irritability of tin is less. Still more significant is the action of anesthetics and narcotics. Under their action, the sensitiveness of metals can be reduced to any desired degree, exactly as is the case of human beings. A more striking parallel between animal matter and metals is established by Professor Bose. The action of some narcotics on the human frame is known to be paradoxical under certain conditions, while a large dose of opium, for instance, decreases the sensitiveness of the human body. A very minute dose has exactly the opposite effect, that is to say, acts as a stimulant. This anomaly has been found by Professor Bose to have a parallel in metals, tin being found to show that its sensitiveness is increased half as much again by being treated with a minute dose of potash, 3 parts in 100, but the sensitiveness begins to decrease when the dose is increased. Now the question suggests itself that if metals are as much alive as animals, then they must also be as liable to die as animals. Professor Bose has found this to be a fact too. Metals not only die, but they can be poisoned and revived, and poisoned and killed. In order to find out these facts, Professor Bose took a piece of metal which showed full vigor of sensitiveness, and so was considered healthy, and treated it with a moderate dose of oxalic acid, which is a powerful poison. The needle of the galvanometer instantly indicated a spasmodic flutter, the sensitiveness of the metal more and more feeble, till it seemed almost to die away. At this stage, a powerful antidote being applied, slowly and gradually the sensitiveness began to revive, and in time became as active as when the metal was not poisoned. The treatment of another piece of healthy metal with a strong dose of the same poison resulted in violent spasms, with rapid enfeeblement of sensitiveness, which soon vanished altogether. After a proper interval, the antidote was tried in vain. The piece of metal was killed forever. The results of experiments with different metals and different poisons were the same. But all poisons not being alike in their action upon animal matter, the same is true of their action on metal, absolutely and undoubtedly. In some cases, however, after all traces of poison had been removed by the counteracting influence of stimulating acids, the poisoned metal was eventually reanimated, which meant that the metal was not really killed, but was merely in a state of suspended animation. The most striking feature of the discovery in this connection is that the very poison which kills both animal and metal is itself endowed with life, which shows itself by indications of irritability and sensitiveness, and which can itself be killed. Here is another significant point in regard to the operation of poison on both an animal and a metal. In the case of an animal, the operation is twofold. First, the actual death process lasting from a few minutes to several hours. Secondly, the purely nervous effect which manifests itself in the form of spasms, paralysis, or other symptoms of which is developed much sooner, sometimes instantaneously. Professor Bose has discovered the same phenomenon in metal. Under the effect of some powerful poisons, there was instantaneous spasm shooting through the metal long before the corrosive action of the acid could penetrate beyond the surface. Professor Bose has proved in his book that all these phenomena, with every single variation, exist as much in the vegetable kingdom as in the animal and mineral. Indeed, the three kingdoms of matter, the animal, the vegetable, and the mineral, are, says the professor, but one in essence, and the physiological distinction between so-called organic and inorganic matter, of which man and metal are but types, is based upon a false and unscientific assumption. Professor Bose dedicates his book to his countrymen, the Hindus, because, he says, his discovery is a discovery made millions of years ago by the Hindu sages, who proclaimed the unity of the universe in essence and construction, as well as in the laws that govern it. End of section 14.